young men live in the Meadowbrook townhouses. A couple of years ago, when the Rochester Utility sent me a mailing that they would, the water bill, they would add to the water billing an insurance for underground pipes. And I talked to them. If I paid it and had a pipe breakage in my Meadowbrook townhouse line, would they come out and fix it? They answered no. I asked the Rochester postmaster if I was solicited to pay for a service that the solicitor knows they would not provide. Is that mail fraud? The answer was, it would seem to be. A couple weeks ago, a letter comes in the mail from the city of Rochester stating, I will be billed for sidewalk repair. Will the city repair a sidewalk in Meadowbrook property? The answer is no. I pay property taxes of almost $3,000. Does a year? Does the city plow my street? No. Does the city repair potholes in my street? No. Do they ever send a street sweeper there? No. I pay dues, a couple $100 a month to my townhouse association for those services and of course more. Also,
Mr. Menning, if you could wrap up, your time is completed.
I do one short.
One short sentence.
I do not like the statement classifying my residents as non-residents in the same letter. Can I say any more?
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Molly Dennis.
All right, thank you. Well, happy St. Patrick's Day. I'm a little Irish, so I did wear intentionally a shirt that has a little green on it, maybe more intentionally on other things as well. It's been over a month and I still haven't heard from the response to the February 3rd transparency request I asked for. As council members, you 7 are the watchdogs, you are the oversight board, you are the ones who are accountable to every single dollar that taxpayer funds are spent, including your own incomes and documenting the hours you spend to justify those incomes. I would appreciate a response so that citizens know transparency is trust. There are many important issues on this agenda tonight, but I have to use these 2 very precious minutes to address potential public fear-mongering that occurred on March 3rd under other business by Councilmember Doring. I believe if you re-watch that, I sent an email to the council. I can post that, and I probably will, on the Community Advocate Facebook page I have. And I would hope that someone will respond to the email that I sent, either publicly on Facebook or via email. That is a very serious issue about slandering a civilian. What most of you have ran for public office with a commitment to integrity, compassion, and government transparency. And as Rochester citizens are struggling, we deserve honest elected representatives who work full-time for us. And Rochester deserves to know where every single penny of their hard-earned tax dollars are spent. When I was on a council, I've asked for those, not given. I hope that this council will find and be transparent where everyone's taxpayer dollars are being spent in our city. So I appreciate a response to that email, and I will make sure that's made public for everyone to see. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Dennis. And though that concludes our public comment period. Clerk Kasel, if you would please call the roll.
Councilmember Keen.
Here.
Councilmember Miller.
Here.
Councilmember Wall.
Here.
Councilmember Fredericks.
Here.
Councilmember Palmer.
Here.
Councilmember Doring.
Here.
Council President Schubring.
Here.
Thank you.
We will move on to the city administrator's report. We have Deputy City Administrator Aaron Parrish. Mr. Parrish, take it away.
President, members of the council, just a few brief updates this evening. Really glad to see you all here this evening. Just a reminder grounding us in sort of our RISE values that guide a lot of the actions of our teammates that they live out every day. A lot of fun things in this report. We have coming up at Cascade Lake, if the community wants to engage with the artists and residents, there's a number of opportunities to do so in April. So check that out. It's available in all of our different outlets in terms of the website, social media, et cetera, but a really great opportunity to do something hands-on that'll be meaningful and impactful, both for them as the experience, but also as the, park evolves in the future. So definitely fun stuff to do there. Not to be outdone, there's Salsa on Sunday coming up March 30th at the Chateau. And so invite anyone to come out and do that. It's a free event. As always, parking in the downtown is free. You can come alone, you can bring a partner, but it sounds like a really great opportunity to do something active as we lean into the spring season here. With that being said, in the downtown, we also, based on previous council authorizations, have ramp work coming forward. So both Second Street ramp as well as the Center Street ramp through October. We'll be having some work done, so just be advised of that. We're trying to keep those as open as possible as we move forward with those projects. Lastly, or almost lastly, second to last, seasonal parking requirements suspended. So just want to make you all aware that we have made the decision to suspend seasonal parking requirements, which we have done in the past. Of course, last year the weather was just a little bit different, and we are, looking forward to an event here potentially Tuesday into Wednesday. And we are encouraging people, should there be weather like that's projected this week, that they voluntarily comply, that they try to observe and adhere to alternate side parking to facilitate snow removal. If we get into a really serious event in this time frame as well, we have the ability to declare a snow emergency. So I know the team watches that, monitors that, and all these events are very fluid. And the range of snow accumulation projected is pretty wide this event, so we'll see what happens. But we do have some contingency plans in place, and I know the team's planning on communicating that out via press release too, to encourage that voluntary compliance until seasonal parking requirements start up again in November. And then lastly, just also committed to that ongoing communication with the community. The team has done as well with many of our partners an excellent job of creating downtownrochesterconstruction.org. And we would just point people to that as their ongoing digital resource to understand what's going on moment to moment with downtown construction impacts. And with that, I would turn it over back to you, Council President Schubring.
Thank you, Mr. Parrish. Mayor Norton is away fulfilling her leadership role as a board member of the National League of Cities. As acting mayor in her absence, I have one item to share. Earlier today, I presented a proclamation that the mayor made before she left, declaring March as Meals on Wheels Month. Each March, Meals on Wheels celebrates the historic day in 1972 when a national nutrition program for seniors was added to the Older Americans Act. This legislation supported the rapid growth of the Meals on Wheels network that now collectively serves 2.8 million seniors each year nationwide. Locally here in Rochester, the program is administered by Family Service Rochester, and last year over 100 Meals on Wheels volunteers, including Councilmember Doring, and I believe Administrator Zelms is also, and I'm sure others on the dais as well, served as volunteers, delivering over 33,000 meals throughout the Rochester region. So join me in celebrating Meals on Wheels Month. And with that, we have the order of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Staff, council members, Councilmember Keen?
I'll move to approve the order of the agenda.
Second. The order of the agenda is moved by Councilmember Keen and seconded by, was that Councilmember Palmer? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Onto our consent agenda. Councilmember Wall is pulling items F8 and F13. Is that correct?
Correct.
Are there any other items being pulled from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I would invite a motion to approve the consent agenda in block items F1 through 7 and F9 through F26.
So moved.
Um, mm, Okay, let's do that again. S-
I'll
so,
move.
Moved by Councilmember Miller, seconded by Councilmember Fredericks. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say,
I'm in favor. I just wanted to make a quick comment if I may.
go ahead, Councilmember Miller.
So I just want to acknowledge, we have a couple items pulled of increasing cost. I want to acknowledge that F14, F18, F19, and F21 are all contract awards that in total have come under about $1.2 million under estimates. And I just think that that's worth acknowledging as we talk about the rising costs later in the meeting. So with that said, sorry to interrupt
Thank
the
you.
vote.
Thank you for pointing that out, Councilmember Miller. All in favor of approving the consent agenda as stated?
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes unanimously. Moving on to our public hearings. We have 6 public hearings on our agenda this evening. And before we begin the public hearings, I'll just take a moment to clarify the process by which each hearing will happen. Staff will introduce or make a presentation on the item. And then if there is an applicant or applicant representative on here, they will have up to 10 minutes to discuss the item. And then I will open the public hearing. Members of the public have 5 minutes each to address the item. And then I will close the public hearing. The applicant will be invited back to for rebuttal for up to 5 minutes. And then at that point, council members will have an opportunity to ask clarifying questions of the applicant and staff. So with that, our first public hearing is G1, which is the issuance of general obligation revenue bonds pursuant through conduit financing on behalf of Mayo Clinic. And Mr. Brian Anderson, take it away.
Yes, thank you, Council President, council members, Deputy Administrator Parrish. So on February 19th of this year, the council did set for a public hearing for the conduit financing on behalf of the Mayo Clinic. And that's why we are here. And with that, we are seeking adoption of a resolution for the issuance of the general obligation revenue bonds pursuant to conduit financing on behalf of the Mayo Clinic in the amount of $500 million for the Mayo project consisting of renovations and upgrades to various facilities as allowed under Minnesota state statute. And with that, basically what they're looking to spend the $500 million on is to start the Bolt Forward Unbound project that we've been talking about since last fall. And it appears that the city has been on board with that. There have been other items brought forward by the Mayo in recent months as well too that the city council has also approved. And the city has assisted with conduit financing for the Mayo Clinic since 1998. About every other year, they would bring forward conduit financing. And the city has always approved it for them. With that being said, there have been other institutions that have seen other applications and other ones have come through. And usually these are for educational institutions or it could be for assisted living or some type of housing as well. That's also allowed under conduit financing as well. It was hard for me to go back to see exactly what was put in the packet because we switched over to a peak system in 2022. So a lot of the information I was looking for was gone elsewhere. I guess it was hard for me to say. I could find the files, but it was hard to see what actually was put in the packet. So I apologize for that. Excuse me. And with that, what is conduit financing? So conduit financing, if approved by the city, allows for nonprofits, hospitals, assisted living, and schools, as I have stated, to access tax-exempt bonds that only municipalities in the state can issue out. So with that, they do allow for lower borrowing costs because it's going to be tax exempt. So why would an investor want to do it? Is because they can achieve a higher after-tax yield as compared to taxable investments. So it becomes cheaper money for them to go ahead and use for their investment that they're looking to do. The city is being, again, asked to issue the general obligation revenue tax exempt bonds for Mayo, as it has done in the past, and simply because it is within the jurisdiction of the city. So they could do a host city and bring a host city, but the city council of the city of Rochester would still have to set the public hearing and approve that. So it only makes sense that the city of Rochester is going to approve a project that is within its own city. And again, I've seen other scenarios where they do ask a host city, but that usually is if it's a bigger network, assisted living or something like that, where they're a larger network throughout the state. And then the city by resolution is being asked to approve the bonds. However, it does not do it in its traditional fashion. There's a lot of paperwork and agreements and stuff that go on behind the scenes. So you're not going to see the city go out and technically issue the bonds as you would traditionally. There is no liability to the city when they do conduit financing. And I've never heard in my 29 years of one of these coming back on any city, I guess, where it's now the responsible or the liability goes back onto the city. So I just want to make a note of that, that it's not the liability of the city, and been said that by a number of different attorneys and including our auditors. They simply make a note within our act for that you have issued conduit financing, and that's basically it. It's not put in their books as a liability or anything like that. And the credit worthiness for the bonds will be the mayor's credit worthiness, not the city's credit worthiness, and I think that's worth pointing out as well. The criteria that we took a look at when we were looking at this, and that any city should take a look at too, would be the public benefit and purpose of the project that's being done. And again, with both Forward Unbound, and seems like the city supports that. So that would be the public purpose for that one. The financial viability, the credit worthiness. Again, the Mayo Clinic has AA bond rating. Risk management. Again, there's no direct liability to the government, to the city of Rochester. Legal regulatory compliance. We're talking about tax exempt status, so that meets that regulatory compliance. Economic and fiscal impact. Again, this is for economic development and job creation. The transparency is for the public hearing that we are having here tonight, which is in accordance with state law. And then the long-term sustainability. Again, we've been doing this since the city has been doing this since 1998. And the Mayo Clinic has been around since 1864. So I think that passes the long-term sustainability test. With that, I would like Todd and his team to come up from the Mayo Clinic, if that's all right, Council President. And if you'd like to say a few words at this time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. And if the Mayo team would like to come up, and please introduce yourself, and you have a total of 10 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Todd Heather with Mayo Clinic, a Senior Investment Officer. With me, I have Paul Gorman, Chief Investment Officer.
Could you folks get really close to the microphone
Hi,
there?
Paul Gorman, Chief Investment Officer and Treasurer for Mayo.
And I'm Jennifer Hansen from Dorsey and Whitney. I'm a bond counsel to the clinic.
Yeah, I think Brian summed it up very well. This is something that we do every few years. We issue tax exempt debt, and we need to do that through an issuing authority. And we've had a long and storied history with the city of Rochester and being partners alongside each other. So we would ask for approval as we move forward, and we're here to answer any questions that may come up.
I think we just add that the partnership with Rochester has been a very good one, and one where our next goal here is to build the best hospital in the world is our hope. And this project is part of the financing for that.
All right. Anything else? Okay, we will invite you back up after the public hearing.
Thank you.
I will now open the public hearing. If anyone from the public wishes to comment on this item, please step forward. If anyone from the public wishes to be heard on this item, please step forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and invite our applicants back up for any closing comments. And then you may want to stay there because we may have some questions from council members.
Just thank you for the time, and nothing to add. We appreciate the opportunity.
All right, council members, questions from to the staff or to the applicant? Seeing none, I have not so much a question, but One, I see great value. Obviously, there is a $5 billion project that Mayo Clinic, the #1 hospital for the 7th year in a row, is placing in this community, and so there's great benefit. One of the things that we hear a lot about as city representatives is that Mayo Clinic does not pay taxes, and I know in checking with our staff that just last year, Mayo paid $7.8 million in property taxes, which represents about 7.7% of our property tax levy. So I just wanted to get that on the record. And any comments, any additional information about that?
Appreciate the comment. I would note that our employees do pay taxes. So we have been growing employees for a long time in this region. We're the #1 employer in 17 counties in southeastern Minnesota. So we appreciate the point, and we're importantly doing our best to make sure we treat our employees well and treat the city well.
Great, thank you. You may sit down. Seeing no questions, is there a motion on this item?
Yeah, I'll move to adopt a resolution for issuance of general obligation revenue bonds pursuant to conduit financing on behalf of Mayo Clinic in the amount of $500 million for a Mayo Clinic project consisting of renovations and upgrades to various facilities as allowed under Minnesota statutes sections 469.152-469.165.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Doring and seconded by Councilmember Palmer. Anything else to add, Councilmember? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And you may stay for the meeting, or you may. But I'm supposed to get us out of here because I think some of the members here want to partake in green beer or something like that. So moving on to our second public hearing, this is the reconstruction of 17th and a half Street Northwest from 19th Avenue Northwest to 21st Avenue Northwest, RPU project, and this will be presented by Public Works. Ann Krofsky. Is Ann in the room here?
Yes, Amy Kriatsky.
Oh, Amy, I'm sorry, Amy.
Yes, good evening, Council President, members of the council. As you may remember, in January, we presented a feasibility report for 17 and a half Street reconstruction between 19th Avenue and 21st Avenue. Following that, in February, we held an improvement hearing where the council moved the project forward and ordered the preparation of the assessment roll. So tonight is the assessment hearing, which we are presenting the assessment roll. The assessment roll outlines the proposed assessments for the abutting property owners. So the action before council tonight is to levy the proposed assessments for the project, as well as we're also seeking authorization to bid this project. So quick reminder, the assessment policy was updated in 2023. Our new policy really scaled back the eligible items, so therefore decreasing the amount assessed to the adjacent property owners. Assessments are now based off of property value, and generally the eligible items consist of pavement items. So if there's any property owners here tonight who wish to object to these assessments, they would need to do so in writing, either prior to tonight's meeting if they're not in attendance, or tonight at the meeting. Construction is scheduled for the summer of 2025, just because projects typically have a punch list for things to get wrapped up. We would imagine that these assessments would not appear on the property until 2026. It's also important to note that the assessment roll presented tonight is the maximum amount possible. So if we were to receive favorable bids, or the amounts were to come in less, the abutting property owners would only be assessed for the actual cost. So with that, you can go ahead and open up for public comments, and I'm available for questions afterwards.
All right. Thanks, Ms. Krofsky. This is a public hearing. If you wish to be heard on this item, please step forward. This is a public hearing. If you wish to be heard on this item, please step forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and invite my colleagues to ask any questions of staff at this point. Seeing none, is there a motion on this item?
Sure, I'll make a motion adopting a resolution levying the proposed assessments related to reconstruction of 17.5 Street Northwest from 19th Avenue Northwest to 21st Avenue Northwest, project number J7855, and second part, authorizing advertisement for bids and scheduling a bid opening on April 22nd, 2025 at 11 a.m. for reconstruction.
A motion has been made by Councilmember Miller. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Wall. Anything else to add, Councilmember Miller? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
I simply
Member
wanted
Wall,
to
go ahead. I'm sorry.
commend the staff on the project, and I'm very pleased with the assessments, which compared to other recent projects are about half, obviously driven by the large value of the school on the south side of the lot, but very good project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wall. Any other comments on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. Moving on to public hearing G3, which is a public right-of-way vacation by TD Bulldog Investments LLC. And this will be presented by Community Development's Chase Pater. Mr. Pater, go ahead.
Good evening, Council President Schubring, council members, Jace Pater with Community Development. Before you is CD 2025-002, BAC by TD Bulldog Investments LLC. The petitioner requests a vacation of an approximate 130-foot long public right-of-way easement, originally platted in 1907, located on the northern half of 1111, 1117, and 1119 2nd Street Southwest. The public right-of-way easement is no longer in use as adjoining parcels have redeveloped and vacated portions of the original easement. Because of this, the remaining right-of-way that is being proposed being vacated tonight has become unable to be utilized. The Development Review Team and Planning Commission are recommending approval with one condition, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pater. Is the applicant here to speak on this item?
I don't believe they're planning on attending.
Okay. At this point, I will open the public hearing. If there are members of the public who wish it to be heard on this item, please step forward at this time. If you'd like to be heard on this item, please step forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and invite questions from my colleagues. Seeing no questions, is there a motion on this item? Councilmember Keen.
Yeah, I'll move to adopt a resolution providing a public right-of-way vacation number CD 2025-002 VAC by TD Bulldog Investments LLC with one condition: to vacate approximately 130-foot long public right-of-way.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Keen and seconded by Councilmember Palmer. Councilmember Keen, any more to add? Councilmember Palmer, anything? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. Mr. Pater, stay where you are. G4 is a utility easement vacation by Rochester Title.
Council President Schubring, council members, Jace Pater with Community Development. Before you is CD 2025-003 VAC by Rochester Title to vacate an existing 8-foot wide public utility easement lying in parts of Lot 1 and Lot 2, Block 3, Goodings Addition, Olmsted County, Minnesota, which is 1107 9th Street Northwest. When this home was originally constructed in 1956, it was built within this existing utility easement. The property is currently being sold, and during the title search process, it was determined that the home was built within this easement. Therefore, the request to vacate and bring the parcel into compliance was made, and the Development Review Team is recommending approval with one condition of this vacation. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pater. Is the applicant here? Rochester Title, please step forward. You have 10 minutes to discuss this item. Don't have to take it all. Please identify yourself.
I promise I won't. My name is Sarah Batzloff, and I'm the president of Rochester Title.
I'm Sarah Goverick. I'm a staff attorney at Rochester Title.
And there is only one condition that was brought forward, and that was that we obtain a replacement easement on the northerly sides of the property, and that request was made by Rochester Public Utilities. That has been done. The replacement easement was drafted by the city attorney's office, has been signed by all the parties, and has been recorded. So I believe we've met all the criteria.
Perfect. All right, thank you. You may sit down and we'll invite you back up after the public hearing. This is a public hearing. If you wish to be heard on this item, please step forward. This is a public hearing. If you wish to be heard on this item, please step forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and invite the applicant back up to say any closing words that they wish to say. They are not wanting to do that, so I'll invite my colleagues to for questions of staff. We're a pretty quiet bunch today. Councilmember Palmer, thank you very much.
I have a question for the applicant. Is this actually the first time this property's been sold since it was built?
This property has been sold, it was originally built in 1958, has been sold in the 60s, 70s, 80s, in the 2000s, many, many, many times with no one ever catching this. And unfortunately, our seller ended up a place that's when it was caught. So it's been bought and sold many, many times, same house.
Thank you. Just curious.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, is there a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion. Adopting a resolution approving utility easement vacation number CD 2025-003 VAC by Rochester Title with one condition, to vacate an approximately 8-foot wide utility easement.
Moved by Councilmember Palmer. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Doring. Any further to add? Councilmember Wall, go ahead.
Does the action have to include the condition which has already been met?
Mr. Pater?
Not necessarily. It has been recorded, so we can move forward without the condition.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Fredericks?
I'd like the name of all the attorneys that missed it, so I don't hire them.
Mr. Pater, make the list. Okay, seeing no further questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. And just in case we're not going fast enough, I am going to pull items G5 and G6 and hear them as one public hearing. So we have a zone change by Build Wealth Min, and we have a comprehensive plan amendment by Build Wealth Min. And they will be presented in tandem by Mr. McGill. Go ahead.
Thank you, Council President Schubring, members of the council, good evening. My name is Desmond McGill. I'm with the Community Development Department. The property owner is requesting a comprehensive plan amendment on 1.07 acres from low-density residential to medium-density residential, and a zone change on that same property from R2, which is low-density residential small lot, to R3, which is medium-density residential zoning, for the future development of a 12-unit apartment complex or structure. The subject property is located north of Willow Ridge Drive Southwest and west of Sedge Meadow Circle Southwest in the south central part of the city. The applicant has submitted a concurrently running application for general development plan, which encompasses 20 single-family homes, 36 twin homes, 69 triplex units, the 12-unit apartment structure, and a 6-acre community center site, and also 63 acres of environmentally constrained property. It should be noted that the original request for a comprehensive plan amendment and zone change was for an 8-acre site, which included the area that the owner intends to develop as a community center. The applicant requested revising their request to reduce it those requests to just 1.7 acres upon presenting the proposal at a neighborhood meeting for the future major land subdivision application, which was held after the February 26th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission has recommended approval to the city council of both of these applications when it was the 8-acre request. We will need two separate motions on this, one for the comprehensive plan amendment, one for the zone change. The comprehensive plan amendment does require a supermajority vote for a council for an approval of that application. And that concludes my introduction. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McGill. And is a representative from Build Wealth, Minnesota here? Please step forward, state your name, and you have 10 minutes.
Yep, I'm Mark Welch with G Cubed Engineering, representing the applicant, Build Wealth, Minnesota. And we did just originally submitted that with 8 acres. During the planning commission meeting, some of the neighbors were concerned about the community center being rezoned. We don't need the rezoning for the community center. And so we then had a neighborhood information meeting getting ready for submittal of the major land subdivision permits. And that came up as a item that they were concerned with yet. So we agreed to reduce it to just the apartment area. And so what you're seeing is just the apartment area being rezoned and the land use plan amendment for that. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have. So we did talk with a couple of the neighbors in the last couple of days, and they're appreciative of that. They're not here today because there was nothing that they are going to be contesting. We'll continue to work with the neighbors on the other aspects of this development. So.
All right, thank you. We will call you back up after the public hearing. This is a public hearing. If you wish to be heard on this item, please step forward. This is a public hearing. If you wish to be heard on this item, please step forward. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and invite the applicant back up for any closing words. He has none, so council members, any questions for the applicant or the staff? Mr. McGill, I'm a little confused. So there was one neighborhood information meeting and there's going to be another one? Can you clarify that?
Sure, absolutely, Council President Schubring. There has actually been 2 neighborhood meetings. The first meeting would have been to discuss the comprehensive plan amendment and the zone change. And then there was a subsequent neighborhood meeting specifically to talk about the future major land subdivision request, which the applicant will be making soon. That meeting happened in between the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to discuss the zone change and comprehensive plan amendment and this council meeting. But there has been 2 so far.
Got it. Thank you. Any other questions? Is there a motion on this item? Councilmember Keen, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion. This is on G5, the zone change. And is that the correct order? We're going to do the zone change first?
G6, please.
Yeah, we'll do the comprehensive plan amendment first, G6. I'm going to move to adopt a resolution approving the comp plan amendment number CD 2025-001 CPA by Build Wealth Minnesota Incorporated, consisting of a change of land use classification on 1.07 acre site from low density residential to medium density residential.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Keen and seconded by Councilmember Miller. Any more to add? Councilmember Keen, go
Yeah,
ahead.
just for my peers here, there has been the 2 neighbor information meetings. This is the representative talked about that there's a 90-acre place here that we're looking at developing about 30 acres. Most of the issues have been about the other land there, that it's environmentally sensitive. It's got karst geology and other things that the neighbors are concerned about, and we're seeing if there's some ways to work through that kind of stuff. And we really, I did notice that it was, people did notice that the representatives were reacting to the concerns, and so I think we're on a good path.
All right, Councilmember Miller, anything to add? Any questions from council members? Councilmember Palmer? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Moving to the second part, G5, which is a zone change by Build Wealth of Minnesota. Is there a motion on this item?
Sure. I'll make a motion approving zone change number CD 2024-002 ZC by Build Wealth Men, changing the zoning designation on a 1.07 acre site from R2 to R3, and the second part of the motion directing the city attorney to prepare an ordinance for the first reading.
Moved by Councilmember Miller.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Keen. Anything further to add? Councilmember Keen, anything? Questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. And we finished our public hearings in record time. And now we will move on to our reports and recommendations. And we have Only have two reports and recommendations, which are the pulled items from Councilmember Wall. And we'll start with H1, which is Council Chambers AV implementation requests for proposals. Councilmember Wall.
Thank you. I pulled this for the purposes of exploring an RFP that will consider reuse of serviceable items from the current audio-visual configuration, reducing the cost of the project to the county and the city, and the reduction of electronics in the waste stream. And when the chair finds it appropriate, I have other commentary and questions.
Okay, staff, Deputy Administrator Parrish, do you want to start this off?
Yeah, President, members of the council, we have Jeremiah Bauman and Jess Schuler here kind of leading this project for the city, although there's many involved. As you know, there's this an ongoing source of energy with this project and trying to get us to a great spot where we can deliver a high value and do good production with your council meetings. As you know, we've been challenged at times to deliver that when we're streaming and trying to deliver through 3 different mechanisms: cable, our Granicus online portal, as well as going out to YouTube at times. And so, that just complicates our landscape for what we have to do. I would note that this facility was originally constructed in the 90s. The last substantive investment in the AV equipment here is 2014, and most of it is beyond useful life and or within the period of time in which we can functionally service it. So I know it's not an insignificant sum of money. You could value engineer this to do something less, but you would do that at the expense ultimately of the production value that you're trying to accomplish. So we could go wide angle lens, one shot, be relatively static in our approach. Our impression is you want a bit of a higher production value. I would also note that this is funded through our public educational and governmental funding source. So this isn't necessarily levy impacted. This is a portion of cable franchise fees that we receive that we can invest only in capital equipment for AV. So we have a pretty limited universe of alternatives that we can spend that money on. We've had good engagement with the county, but I would just say we're looking to kind of take you to that next level with your production value and hopefully put us in a position to have a more consistent experience with the city council here. But with that, our technical folks are here and certainly happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Councilmember Wall?
Thank you. I guess when I see a number like 600,000, I just compare it to what else you could buy for $600,000. And we talk a lot on this dais about affordable housing, and I think, golly, that's 2 houses on the affordable side in Rochester. And I look at the value of what we might get for this particular expenditure of $600,000 versus providing a home. I realize you can't spend the money. I'm not trying to create that parallel. And I said it on the dais before. I think I said I'm really surprised what $65 million can buy, or even $600,000 to buy. So I'd be interested in trying to reduce expenses where possible, including some pretty expensive items that would not be beyond serviceable life, monitors that seem to last forever, including 2 huge ones over there and one in the rotunda. We've got 9 screens in front of us. We have brand new on and off buttons that took months to function, and now they finally function. I'm not an AV expert, to be sure. I would simply like to be as conservative of public funds as possible, no matter what funding source it comes from. That's a long way of getting to, is it possible to construct an RFP that would reward bidders for reusing items that do have yet a long shelf life?
Sure, I can speak to that, Council President, Council Member Wall. So in the design process that we went through, one of the steps was to look at what equipment we did have available in the chamber. And sadly, as Mr. Parrish had mentioned, a lot of it is past its end of life. We pulled some of the numbers just recently, and some of the things that are past life really barely holding on. So even those mute buttons that we still have a lovely time with actually get reset before every meeting because they aren't actually working. So that kind of has been taken into account. It's just some of the bigger things are finally due, specifically our cameras and a camera package to replace what we have somewhere around the $50,000 mark just for hardware. So there's some of those kind of requirements that we'd have to have. But I do think in the initial design that was taken into account of how we could manipulate what we have. If you remember, we did just get the cable fixed and that required some hardware. That actually is a part of the new design, so keeping that around as well. But sadly, it's just most of the large equipment that we have that does a lot of the configuration is just past due.
Councilmember Palmer.
You mentioned a couple things that are, I have questions on is why do we need to do any more production than what we have already? I mean, I don't see us calling for that. Does that add a lot of cost to doing production?
Sure. So I think the issue is to a lot of what we have that we're looking for in the RFP is to maintain with a little bit further to kind of future-proof a little more. But what we have is barely hanging on. The brain, I guess I could call the unit, the crestron that runs the entire room, is past end of life, and we reset that weekly. And if that goes down, nothing will work in this room. And so the replacement in the RFP is to maintain that standard while also future-proofing as best we can. So it's one of those things that we're not looking necessarily to increase by a long shot. We're actually just trying to get where we're at now while future-proofing as best as we can.
So I go back to production. I understand the old equipment's old.
Yep.
But I mean, if we have one camera now, is there any reason to go to more than one camera at a time? I don't hear people calling for, I hear people calling for it to be consistent and working, and we all want that. And, you know, the buttons I think were added within the last 2 years.
Correct.
So I guess I mean, we have updated some stuff. The last question, I guess I go back to what Mr. Wall, I think, is getting at is I'd like to see it done with what we have to have, not what we want. And I think the what we have to have, I think, is where I feel more comfortable at. And I see that we're not doing room 104. Room 104 has been, what, a 2-year adventure that we've been working on? So,
Yes.
So we had a contractor who didn't do their job. Are we going back on them and recouping what we paid them?
Yeah, I may address a few of these points. First and foremost, I would say that a lot of what you're seeing in the investment here isn't in this room. It's in the back room and really designed to help make a lot of these things work. And so it's, you know, back end kinds of things. That all has to work for 104 to work effectively. We feel like we have the opportunity once, you know, the programming is done correctly, where we have the opportunity to do 104 in a good way, even with more limited technology and lower production value with the owls like we used at RPU. We've recently invested in a number of those that you all may have experienced when you had your strategic planning session out at RPU. We now have those for 104. We have them for 320. We brought them for the DSIC. For a moderate production level, those are going to be serviceable and meet expectations in all likelihood. And it would allow you that opportunity to do, you know, the roundtable conversation in 104. But until we get the programming and all that figured out in the back room here, we can't then make that leap into the next room. And there is some investment required, particularly if you want to continue in the cable space. And most of the increase in cost for 104 will be if you want to continue to broadcast over cable, and we'll facilitate that policy conversation. I also think this is going to be a really interesting time when you have to leave these chambers for 2 months while this project happens to say, you know, could a streaming only option be just fine for us as a city? Now, that's always been a delicate conversation where we want to maintain the 3 channels and there's commitments in all spaces and people like to receive the city differently. But that period of time will give you the opportunity to say, you know what, streaming to YouTube is working out just fine for the vast majority of folks. We're uploading to cable later, and that works for people. It's just that getting live to cable. And we could then take that and probably be, much more broadly distributed. I would also say there are some things within these estimates that are expensive, that are kind of proprietary to rooms like this, particularly with the assistive technology that the team's been working on. So Jeremiah and Jessica maybe give you a better perspective on some of the cost numbers that we're carrying there. But some of it is to provide, that accessibility to the in-room experience that we might not be currently providing. So there is some numbers embedded in that particularly for assistive hearing, but also to get our captioning kind of in a better spot than what we are in terms of instead of moving it all around like you see here now. Lastly, I'm sorry, I'm talking so much here, but lastly, I'd also say we have the opportunity when we bid this, we can bid the items discreetly. And when we bring back a recommendation to you, if there's things that you don't feel that merit investment, we could peel that off. I mean, we obviously will make a recommendation. This RFP is a reflection of the staff recommendation as we partnered in the design process. But when you get the bids, just like you all know, 600,000 is our estimate right now. We want to get the bids to tolerance and test that. And we could certainly bring value engineering ideas forward at the time of award when we have real numbers for you as well.
Thank you, Mr. Parrish. Go ahead, Councilmember
You
Palmer.
skipped over my question on 104 and the last contractor. How do we go back to recoup some losses on that deal?
Yeah.
Is that a city attorney question?
Yeah, President, Members Council, I'll start and I'd certainly encourage Michael Spindler, Craig, because this has been a staff level conversation. It's just how much effort do we put into that in order to potentially achieve accountability? And I don't know, I'd maybe defer to Michael a little bit more, but we can. It's just, is the time worth it at the end of the day?
Mr. Spindler, Craig.
Councilmember Palmer, council members, I don't necessarily have much to add specifically about that contractor conversation. I have not been very specifically involved. Like all situations, all projects, there are oftentimes bumps along the way, and our teammates problem solve with contractors. I just don't know the details of the 104 project and where things went sideways. I certainly haven't been part of a conversation where there have been identified deficiencies of the contractor. Obviously, with the end product, we have concern about that, but I'm just telling you in part that I haven't been part of that conversation and nobody has brought it that direction so far.
Go ahead, Councilmember.
I would encourage us to at least get the facts to us so we can make a decision. I'm not trying to badmouth somebody off not knowing what's going on, but I don't think anybody's happy with the end product, and I believe we ended the contract. So I would be encouraging to at least have some report back to us to say these are your options. And I believe Mr. Parrish said that we could almost go with a menu of, we can pick this as the level we want, level A, B, and C. I'm adding that, but I would encourage us to have that come back to us.
Understood.
Councilmember Keen.
Yeah, again, I want to kind of confirm some of the things I was thinking of as I went through this. But first, I do want to say that I consider myself maybe part of the problem here, because a couple of years ago, the staff wanted to drop the need to go to charter cable because it was causing so much technical difficulty. And I considered it a problem because kind of an age discrimination, because it's, all the YouTube and the thing is good for the under 50 crowd, but we had a bunch of people that would lose contact with the city if we took it off cable. So time marches on, and over the years, it gets to be less important, and maybe it is something that, as Deputy Administrator Parrish says, that maybe we'll find out that it's not as missed as much as we thought it would be. One thing when I was going through this that maybe I read into it, it isn't there, but I view this design was going towards a single vendor versus a collection of parts. Did I read too much into that?
I think you're on the right track. It's because everything has been piecemealed since the 2014-2015 install. This is the chance to unify a lot of the equipment so that it's the most compatible, where right now we have a lot of different brands that then require different adapters and different programming, and makes it much more complicated and therefore more costly.
the one thing that I was reading into this was that, you know, for lack of better words, it's one throat to choke if things aren't working. It's not that someone says, well, that one doesn't work. And I think we've all had some of this experience at home with connecting different parts together, and then who's to blame when they don't work? So I'm hoping we're getting that. I was thinking that, and that integration, I'm going to say, you usually have to pay for. And again, I'm glad we're partnering with the county on this, that it isn't just for the city. At least we're spreading the cost over this. I do consider this the county's room, that they own this and we share it. And again, I hope that partnership can go forward.
Councilmember Miller.
Just a question about the county's role. When would they approve their portion? Have they discussed it beyond like staff level engagement?
Yeah, President, members of the council, Councilmember Miller, you know, we've worked with the staff. I know they have had engagement with their board. They're carrying funding in their budget, a little bit less than what's recommended here, but, you know, maybe $50,000. And we agreed, once we got the bids back, that we would reconcile and just make a final determination moving forward. The other thing I would note, as part of this project, assuming it moves forward, while you're out of this space, the county also is planning to make some fairly substantial investments in the space just to do some renovations on the drapery, the carpet, and a few other, some of the lighting here as well. And so just using it as an opportunity to do a refresh of the chambers overall.
Okay. Looking forward, another question. When we talk about future proofing, is it correct that there's some state legislation that may change the remote participation beyond this body of boards and commissions, that an additional technology investment would help facilitate community member engagement in boards and commissions should that pass?
Yeah, President, members of the council, Councilmember Miller, I think that's a great question. That's been a hot topic, the legislature, for many, many, many years. It's opened up a little bit after the pandemic. I mean, there's even a little bit more runway with that than what there used to be. But yes, that could be more of an opportunity. It is, there are bills exactly doing what you said, and being able to facilitate the remote experience. And I would also say, these investments, while they sound challenging and they are expensive and they're hard to, you know, connect with, we have been saving money by being able to bring people in remotely. But also, if we can do a better job of creating the right experience, and it can be a little bit better of a two-way experience when they're remote. Right now, as you know, people that are not in the room tend to feel like they kind of drop into the conversation, and it's a little bit more challenging. But we used to fly people in here like crazy for, you know, different consulting engagements, and over time, I think that's going to make a difference if we can have a better experience for those folks, whether they're on boards or, in most cases, consultants that we hire that aren't local.
Okay. A different question, still looking forward, what would we expect the useful life of new equipment in this package to be? How long would we future-proof ourselves for?
That's a great question. So most of the new AV equipment you'll see is 4K, 8K rated. I don't personally believe we're going to get to an 8K streaming anytime soon. But that's kind of the biggest thing, is really in this space is digitalizing. So all of our speakers that we've had problems with are all analog. Everything now is digital, so we can control that, dial those in. So I think a lot of it's moving in that direction. And then having that 4K capable, if streaming really moves into 4K as the new standard, then the equipment will already be able to do that.
But the equipment itself, like the controller that's reset every week, the verge of failing, how long would we safeguard ourselves from a tenuous streaming situation should this investment be completed?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of hard to try and pinpoint that. I believe like IT make sure that we replace computers within every 5 years. Looking at, you know, a lot of the warranties are maybe 3-year guarantees, so you kind of think warranty plus 1 gets you to 4, so probably 5-ish. I think the biggest thing is our mix right now of being partly analog, partly digital, just makes it so much more difficult to swap. And with a full new design, we'd at least have a little more future proofing with swapping individual things as they die in that timeline.
So we would not be looking to make half of a $600,000 investment every 5 years?
I don't believe so, no.
And a question about the fund, how frequently or what money is coming into this with what frequency? I know cable franchise fees are the funding source. Perhaps there's some decline there. How long would it take, right? I mean, at a roughly $400,000 fund balance there, how many years of cable franchise fees is that?
Councilmember Miller, thank you for the question. Currently, the PEG account, we receive payments through there quarterly. It is tapering off as, the number of cable subscribers does decline. Currently, it's about 60,000 a year that we're seeing for, in those payments.
And should we make this investment at the recommended level, would that fund be available to cover the necessary improvements potentially in room 104 to bring the standard up there, or should we expect other funding sources to be recommended?
Yeah, it certainly is an option. Obviously, depending on the bids we get back, we are utilizing a fair amount of the fund balance, but definitely have the potential to use PEG for 104. We have a number of committees and commissions that utilize that and ultimately upload their broadcast to our cable TV channel for people to enjoy. So definitely an option.
Any other questions on this item? Councilmember Wall, anything else? Is there a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion here to authorize the release of requests for proposals for the implementation and maintenance of advanced audiovisual and conferencing technologies in the council chambers.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Keen and seconded by Councilmember Miller. Councilmember Keen, any further to add?
No, I do appreciate this discussion of let's make sure we stay, keep track of our spending and what we're doing on. I'm struggling to think of the staff presenting a list of options to a council. That sort of scares me, but I think we'll be able to work through it.
Councilmember Miller, anything else to
I
add?
want to say thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate Councilmember Wall pulling this to have a bit more discussion about it. I think in the nature of understanding how little we appreciate about the work that goes into keeping this system up and running, I understand that we're hearing from the people who, Jeremiah, I appreciate all the work that you do to keep us able to be transparent to the public. So I think it's a reasonable time to coordinate this investment with the county, and I'm glad to support this.
Councilmember Wall.
I too appreciate your work. I used to regularly receive the chief audiovisual engineer of a large building in my office and had to work through a lot of equipment difficulties over the years. So I understand entirely. I'm not disillusioned that somehow this is not going to pass, even though I will cast a nay vote. We'll look forward to value engineering so that we can make this the most cost-effective for the city of Rochester.
Councilmember Palmer.
Yeah, I'm going to amend the motion to have the staff bring back options so we can pick a tier.
Is there a second to the amendment?
I'll second.
Moved by Councilmember Palmer, seconded by Councilmember Fredericks. Councilmember Palmer, go ahead.
I think that it'd be nice for us, or good to have good, better, best, and give us the reason why they rank them that way. And that way we can make, if it's a 5-year investment, we can say we're going to hit the 5-year mark. I think it gives us a little bit of clarity on the production value. I'm not sure that that's what needs to happen. So that's why I made the amendment.
Councilmember Fredericks, anything else to add?
I like to have options to make our best choice. Having just one in front of us, I don't think is ever a great idea.
Councilmember Miller, go ahead.
Just a question, should we move forward with this, should this amendment motion pass, how much time additionally would that take to redo the RFP and bring back to us to then get out?
Yeah, I would maybe I don't know that, if you give us that direction, I think we have enough latitude to move ahead with the RFP. I mean, we would sort of indicate, and there was some of these conversations in the design, I think we would just bring them back. I mean, I'm just going to make an example that we have assistive hearing technology that's sort of embedded as a system in the room versus here's a handheld device that you can be provided. So, I mean, we have the ability to sort of track back into some of those options. And I think we could, I'm not saying we can get like 5 tiers or something, but I think there's going to be a few options that we would be able to present to you and probably fairly short notice, but Jeremiah, maybe you'll clarify that.
Yeah, I think so. With the design that we were provided, there was elements like Mr. Parrish mentioned with some of the accessibility items, some of the pieces like our captioning system. So the recommendation was a 10-year contract on the software because it was more affordable. So there's definitely some different levers that we could look back and probably bring to the table pretty easily.
So looking at our calendar, we don't have another regular meeting until April 7th. So how might we expect this project timing estimated dates to change and our projected completion dates? Should we not authorize RFPs to today?
Who's going to take that one? Mr. Parrish, go ahead.
Your Honor, I think based on the amendment, I don't know that that would significantly adjust our timeline.
Okay.
And we would still, I think, be able to keep cadence, but, you know, we would have to just do some slight modifying in terms of how we're presenting, you know, the bid documents out to people. And we intend to get multiple bidders. We did work with, our designer is also a potential bidder. And so I think the one thing that you hopefully can have confidence in is the people that will likely bid on this project or have also provided us an estimate. And so we should have some confidence in that.
Okay.
But Jeremiah, and Jess, please, you know, disagree if I'm off point here.
Yeah, I think if we're working off of that information that came in that original design, I think we've got that information. Just pushing to the next council meeting, we're looking obviously at that 2-week delay from the calendar that was provided in the RFP. Anything beyond that, obviously then just starts delaying when the start date and end date for the project could be.
I appreciate that. That's what I'm thinking. And I know we've had quite a few projects that have gone beyond original timelines. And so I just want to be cautious of how far we get into the year when we're affecting not just our body, but also the county board, boards and commissions, others that use the space.
Yeah.
Councilmember Keen.
Just to, you want to comment?
Yeah, sorry, Councilman President Schubring.
Go ahead, Mr. Parrish.
I would just say if the council was so inclined, I don't think we would have to bring back the RFP in April. I believe if you gave us the latitude just to make some adjustment to bring you options, I think we could receive that direction and make that adjustment and keep the cadence of the schedule. But
Is that in keeping with your amendment,
Yeah,
Councilmember?
that was my expectation.
Okay. Councilmember Keen, further questions?
Yeah, again, I'm glad to hear that the staff's taken this. I may have been picturing it as a much bigger change than what the staff has taken it to be. So that's good. But I do want to kind of ask, when you portray forward and say the council's going to do good, better, best, how does that coordinate with the county now, or since we're only making 50% of the decision? I'm trying to, I mean, we're up here trying to say we want something to be streamlined or better, but I think we're making it more complicated, or I'm worried about that. So if you can just put me at ease, then I'll know how to go forward.
yeah, Your Honor, I mean, certainly we have to engage with our partner and whether they're acceptable and open to that idea. So yes, that anything we bring the bids back, when we bring forward a recommendation to you, whether it's good, better, best, or option A, B, and C, you know, or maybe something we, you know, don't consider, that the county's perspective would be informed in our recommendation to you on what to award.
Okay, so you would come with a recommendation, not with a list of options.
I think we would come, as a staff, we would come with a recommendation, but then
Okay.
also have, you know, some items outlined that said, you know, we did evaluate this and went with the lower cost option, or we did evaluate this and we went with the higher cost option because of why. And it was important to our partner and we just,
No, this is important to me because then it means that what you're recommending to us, whether we accept it or not, it would be the same thing that the county would be getting recommended, whether they accept it. That's what I'm trying to make sure, that we don't end up, you know, having some sort of back and forth.
I think that's how we would work it, but we would just at least give you some insights into this decision points, the options that were considered, and then for some reason, if you wanted, you know, to deviate from the recommendation, we would have to understand that we have to engage our partner on why we're deviating from that recommendation.
Okay, again, based on this interpretation, I think I can support the amendment.
Councilmember Fredericks.
For Mr. Parrish, for clarity for the public as well as us, what is the minimum requirement? What is the minimum that we are required to do for the community?
So President, members of council, Councilmember Fredericks, you're not obligated to do any of this. This is really reflects your commitment to open government, transparency, but we are not statutorily required in any way to broadcast these meetings.
Okay, so a streamed option, a live streamed option to the internet would be sufficient. Is that wrong or right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could go from anything from not doing anything to asking someone to stream from an iPhone to a higher production value, like, and anything in
Okay.
between there.
Is the cheapest option to record it and just upload it?
I mean, that certainly takes some of the complexity out of the equipment you need in order to do that. Certainly it is an option. It would be likely more cost effective. I know there is a lot of value in people being able to see the live meetings. It does help facilitate remote participation on any number of folks' part. I think the turning point really is, because streaming isn't really that complicated, generally. It's when we have the three, and cable in particular is what complicates it. So I think we could be much more efficient and sustainable if we didn't have to provide a cable option and we uploaded only to cable. We streamed live, uploaded to cable. But again, I know there's just a million opinions on this, and this is well-traveled ground for prior members of the council here too.
You do a great job of following down the trail I'm trying to go.
Right.
So I just think it's important we look at that. We can fight it all we want and say, yeah, cable's important. Wow. I bet you if you had a show of hands in this room tonight, who watches TV via streaming versus cable, I'd be willing to bet there ain't probably hardly anybody in the room that uses cable anymore. But I've heard it from my constituents, they want it and stuff, but we know where the future's going. And I know having things accessible to everybody is important, but I just want to see the breakdown of the costs of all that. Because then you can make an educated decision. It's like, okay, is it worth 300,000 more just to have that ability? I hear the most important thing I hear out in the community is taxpayer dollars. That's the thing I hear the most, is people wanting to save money. So that's I just want to be cognizant of that.
Just to kind of add to Councilmember Frederick's point, so we did hear that cable revenue is down. As we get to this point of making decisions that you talked about earlier, Mr. Parrish, is there an opportunity to do some kind of survey to look at cable versus streaming versus YouTube and all of those different options to give us greater knowledge as we go to that decision point?
Yeah, President, members of council, we can certainly give you some information. We did try to provide some context when this last conversation was last had. I will acknowledge that, like, getting views on cable is difficult. We aren't given sort of, that kind of data in terms of how many people are logging in to watch the live Rochester City Council meeting. But I think what you can use is a good substitute. There are some industry norms that you can apply to cable subscribers. So there's your universal cable subscribers. Then there's the percentage of cable subscribers that actually watch public educational and governmental TV, which is pretty low. And then you can.
So what you're
also see
saying is you can get us some
something,
analysis.
yeah,
Okay.
something.
Councilmember Miller.
Well, I think that was going to be my question. Is it
Councilmember,
possible?
go ahead, Councilmember.
Thank you. Is it possible to correlate a number of subscribers to the franchise fee and show that change over time? We've heard that the revenue coming through franchise fees is declining. Could we see how many people or how many households are associated with that franchise fee, even if we can't see viewers?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Miller. The fee is calculated based on the number of subscribers, so we can absolutely.
So theoretically, we could see the percentage of households in Rochester and how that's changing over time.
Correct.
And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this as well, because I would think of some of the options are, what is the cost of that cable live option? What is the cost of rebroadcasting a recording to cable? And what is the cost, saved by just using streaming options, which are the lowest cost, as we know? So I would be very supportive of seeing that and allowing us that menu. But I think some of the other discussion as far as which technology implements what level, how we make these solutions work, I don't feel comfortable being the person to evaluate that for longevity. So I want to find a balance in there, but I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this.
Councilmember Palmer.
I'm going to piggyback on what Mr. Miller just said. If you could come back to us and say, having live stream cable costs this, and I'm assuming you could all can figure that out or get us a ballpark, I think that would be very helpful, because if it's $2, everybody's going to say, let's do it. If it's, $200, there's no one's going to do it. So, let's come back. Is that possible for when you bring your recommendation?
I believe so. Most of our cable equipment is more than likely going to be reused because it's newer, because that did all die before. So we can kind of factor that in as well.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion on the amendments? Seeing none, everyone familiar with the amendment and where we are? All in favor of the amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, amendment passes. Onto the main item, Councilmember Keen.
Yeah, again, I just want to make you're at the point where you're like doing a bigger project. This is usually where things are more cost effective than if you do something and then say, what would it cost to add something onto it? So I don't want to get caught up in this thing that we're going to try to do the cheapest thing we can do right now, and then over the next 2 or 3 years, ask for add-ons. I hope, I've had this same thing with putting an addition on the house. You don't try to do it, you don't try to add things on later, because when you're doing the work is with the time to do those bigger things. So I hope we can keep that in mind.
Councilmember Wall.
And I would like to just reframe it a little bit between cheapest and most cost-effective.
Councilmember Doring.
Yeah, I really appreciated the perspective that Councilmember Keen just provided. That's what's been going on in my head during this entire conversation. And I just want to commend our staff again for including some ADA assisted audio products in the RFP. As someone who relies on assisted audio devices to operate in my everyday life, I have found sometimes being on the dais even challenging for me to hear everything going on in the room. So I really appreciate the intentionality of that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Passes 6-1 with Councilmember Wall in the opposition. And moving on to H2, the former F13, which is professional services contract amendment with SRF for architectural and engineering design, downtown Link Rapid Transit. Councilmember Wall, you pulled this item. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. The additional extra consulting money amounts to 19.4% of the original consulting contract. Apparently, a large part of that money was predetermined to be an additional ask, while $700,000, something's happened to my thing here, is devoted to the extended bidding time. I've received good information from staff last week about the expenses, information that I would like shared with the public through this venue, and I have questions when the president deems that acceptable.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is it Mr. Sampson Brown that will take this item?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Council President. Tonight's amendment is amendment number 3 for the city's contract with SRF Consulting with the Link BRT project. This project will be starting construction, and it has in fact started the West Transit Village construction, and we have planned for a period of time to do a contract amendment at about the time construction was starting earlier this year. I've been here just about 8 months, so going back to last fall, we assumed that contracts B, which is the streets, civil utilities, along with contract C, which is the vertical construction piece, would also be under construction. Based on our last full council meeting, those bids were rejected, and we're working quickly to get the contract B work back out to bid. So tonight, with the looming deadline on SRF's multi-year contract with the city to deliver the Link BRT project, we are asking for this contract amendment.
Councilmember Wall, questions?
Yes, thank you. I do thank staff for good information over the past 4 or 5 days on this specific item. If we always knew that there was going to be a predetermined additional ask in consulting fees, was that communicated to us at the time in which we hired a consultant to do this project for us?
Ms. Steinhauser?
Sure, thank you for the question. I'll jump in since Steve's only been here 8 months. This is his first contract amendment. So just for some history, the contract actually goes back to 2019, I believe. So at that point, we.
Ms. Steinhauser, can you get a little closer to
Yep,
the
sure,
microphone there?
absolutely. So the original contract goes back to 2019, I believe. SRF was selected to provide services. Since the original contract, and when they submitted the original contract, it contemplated not only design services, bidding services, but also providing construction management oversight as the designer of record for the project. However, the project has been extended for a number of reasons. We increased the distance of the project. We increased the number of stations for the projects. So it's been through a couple of iterations and a couple of submissions. And amendments, we were always able to amend SRF's contract within the existing approved amount and just move money from task 8, for example. Task 8 is the task where they associated a line item for construction management post bidding. But we were able to move money out of task 8 over to address additional costs related to design changes as a result of this project. Design changes happening a couple of times. Cost escalation as a result of the completion time extending first in 25, then into 26. Now we anticipate in mid-year 27. And so we had always, the original contract did identify construction management services, but those dollars were absorbed into additional design needs when the project designs changed over the past 5 years. And so now we are we had always intended to come forward with an amendment. I'm not sure that we made it completely clear in prior study session updates that an amendment would be forthcoming in construction management services that would be in the $2.5 million amount. Now that number actually is significantly less than what we had originally anticipated because Steve was able to get those tasks negotiated down. However, the number, the amendment that's before you is higher because it also then reflects about $700,000 of additional costs for rebidding, value engineering. So that's a little bit longer question, but yes, we'd always anticipated in the original contract, and we had anticipated, as Steve indicated, we knew we would have to come back with a contract amendment because those dollars had been absorbed in design costs prior to the bidding of the project.
Councilmember Wall.
To put it less congenially, we robbed task 8 to pay for previous tasks, and now we have to come back and replace the money.
Replenish task 8. That's a great way of putting it.
Okay. And it just seems like 19.4%, 700,000 of it due to rebidding, is quite a chunk in additional monies. Do we believe that this will likely be the last of the consulting asks through the end of the project?
Yes, Councilmember Wall, if the project goes as planned, we do not expect to have an additional request. And just want to mention in regards to the dollar value, quick numbers, I'm estimating there's about 15,000 human hours of work, consulting work going in to come up with those numbers. So there is a lot of time and resources spent looking at things like shop drawings and meeting with contractors to make sure construction goes smoothly. Myself and project manager Josh DeFrank spent a measurable amount of time with SRF evaluating the estimated hours of work and where we think they had overestimated and where they, line item or two had possibly underestimated. But the city only pays when they do work. So this is not a lump sum. This is just a time and materials expense, and we will be managing their time as closely as possible to arrive at the lowest total cost about approximately 2 years from now.
I really do appreciate that information and the previous emails that have been sent. But really wanted to make this a public discussion so that it didn't just fly under a consent agenda item. And by the way, I do commend Councilmember Miller for finding the 1 million in underbidding. F-19 went from 823,000 to 407,000. I was so shocked at that. I sent a question about that last week too. So the staff does really great work on both sides of this issue.
Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you. I do appreciate the response I received from my Thursday questions. It's always good to have those. Where I'm disappointed is that this is a bid renewal, and one of the questions I asked, if we don't do it tonight, then we don't renew it, and we're gonna have to have a different company or go out for bid. So I don't know why we couldn't have done this a month ago. Maybe you have an answer to that. And then the oversight that we're getting, this is the third time we're bidding this, and that's really frustrating to me that we're having to rebid and rebid and rebid, and now it might take the start time and push it back. I know after the first time that you worked hard with the contractors answering questions. So those are my two disappointments, I guess, and I don't know if you have a response to why it was done tonight, due by the end of the month.
So I'll just respond to that. Councilmember Palmer, Council President Schubring, and rest of the council. That was, honestly, that was my call. I indicated to Mr. Sampson Brown that let's bring it as one package as opposed to split it up, because it could seem confusing. It could seem confusing to the public, like we amended and here we are amending again. So I will own that was my call to, we had talked about taking it last meeting. We didn't have quite all the numbers. I said, let's just take it as one package or one amendment as opposed to bringing two over time. So apologize if that misled anybody.
Other questions from council members? Seeing none, is there a motion on this item?
To authorize the contract amendment to the professional services contract for SRF Consulting Group, increase the contract amount by $3.288 million to a total contract amount of $20.217 million for architectural and engineering, design and construction administration services for the Rochester Downtown Lincoln Rapid Transit.
Moved by Councilmember Councilmember Keen. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Miller. Councilmember Keen, you have the floor.
No, again, it probably is, we could spend more time on this. I look at these things on the consent agenda mainly because they're things that we had talked about on the other parts of these contracts, not specifically SRF, but this whole thing of not getting our bids, and then was the project going to be, so I took it as an extension, and that's why I was in here, but it probably is worth the time, both as Councilmember Wall says, not just to make sure we have an understanding, but to present it to the public.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. Moving on to, we have no council initiated actions. We have one ordinance first reading. Go ahead, Mr. Spindler Craig.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item J1, an ordinance designating the Pill Hill Historic District a historic landmark district and amending the official zoning map as referenced in 60.200.020 paren A, close paren, of the Unified Development Code of the City of Rochester.
Thank you, Mr. Spindler Craig. We have 3 ordinance second readings. Go ahead, Mr. Spindler Craig.
Item K1, an ordinance annexing to the city of Rochester approximately 1.03 acres of land located 300 feet north of Wilder Road Northeast, city of Rochester.
I'll
Is
move
there a
approval.
motion? Councilmember Keen,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Palmer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Go ahead, Mr. Spindler Craig.
Item K2, an ordinance rezoning approximately 38.88 acres of land located east of 60th Avenue Northwest and approximately 500 feet south of King Arthur Road Northwest, identified by PIN numbers 075456, 078551, 073834, 075457, 078584, from R1 Mixed Single Family Residential to R2 Low Density Residential Small Lot, and amending ordinance number 4478, known as the Unified Development Code of the City of Rochester, Minnesota.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Palmer, seconded by Councilmember Miller. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. K3.
An ordinance annexing to the city of Rochester approximately 28.84 acres of land located east of 60th Avenue Northwest and approximately 500 feet south of King Arthur Road Northwest, identified by PIN number 073833.
I move approval.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Doring, seconded by, who was that?
Palmer.
Councilmember Palmer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Seeing none, we have no tabled items. I have no listed other business. Is there any other business that council members would wish to bring up or staff? Seeing none, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Palmer,
Second.
seconded by Councilmember Fredericks. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Thank you. Everybody enjoy some green beer, especially St. Patrick Keen.
Special.
Recording stopped.